Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to do my 2024 reading in review and also tier ranking every single book I read in 2024. So if you're not interested in the reading and review and all the stats, there are timestamps down below, so feel free to skip to just the tier ranking. With the tier ranking, I do have to say that I already did a tier ranking for the first 3 months of the year. So those books will not be included in this tier ranking. So if you're interested in every single book I read this year and see me tier rank it, watch this video and also the one I did earlier in the year, which I'll leave linked for you. I guess my plan was to do like a tier ranking for like every 3 months. I just never did any for the other quarters, I guess. Yeah, I guess those were all the things I wanted to say. So I'm gonna talk about the Goodreads stats and then I'm gonna talk about my own stats. So let me scooch over a little bit so there's more room over here. Okay, so my year in books. As far as the pages and the books read, I'm gonna stick to my own stats because Goodreads doesn't count fan fictions, and even though I only read one, it's still one more than Goodreads tells me I read. So the shortest book I read was Seduced by the Pumpkin Spice Latte, which was 13 pages. I believe it was even 11 pages. This one I read for my Reading Unhinged Halloween romances, which I'll leave that linked for you. And my longest book was a reread and was of course Kingdom of Ash, which had 980 pages. The average book length was 359, which makes sense. That is like the size of a typical romance, plus sometimes I read more, but then I also read novellas to offset that. The most shelved book I read this year was Icebreaker. This one was shelved 1,915,139 times. And the least shelved was Sweet Surrender by Viano Onyomon. This one was only shelved 469, which I would highly recommend Sweet Surrender. So if you've not read that book yet, please do. My average rating is a 4.0. That is pretty on par with every year I read books. I tend to read books pretty highly because I tend to know what I love. I'm also not that strict. And I also, if I really am not enjoying a book, I will DNF. Let's continue to my own stats. In total, I started 110 books and I finished 104, meaning I DNF'd 6 books. As you can see here, my best reading month as far as books are concerned was May. And my worst reading months, as far as books are concerned, was August. And this is also on par for my pages read because in total I read 36,266 pages. And once again, the most pages I read was in May, which was 5,304 pages. The least pages I read was in August, where I read 248 pages. In total, I read 60 ebooks. So I prefer ebooks over physical books. As much as I love reading a physical book, I tend to read ebooks faster because I can read them anytime I want, since I read them on my phone as well as on my laptop and on my Kindle. So 60 ebooks, which is half of all my reading, more than half. Then 39 physical books, 4 audiobooks, and then 7 mixed media, which mixed media is usually reading it physically and also the audiobook. I only had 2 rereads this year. I really want to reread at least 2 books a month. So hopefully next year I can definitely do that. And then 102 not rereads. 75 books were part of a series and 29 were standalones. Of those series, I started 34. I read 28 sequels and I finished 14. And 4 I will not be continuing on with. I will do a more in-depth series video later this month, so check that video out if you're interested in like my in-depth series stats. For genres, this doesn't surprise anybody. 85% of all the books I read were romances, so that's 93 romances, 3 fantasies, 4 contemporary, 4 science fiction, 1 classic, 2 erotica, 1 magical realism, and 1 nonfiction. I read 77 novels, 25 novellas, 3 manga, and 3 graphic novels, and also 1 fan fiction. Now for my star ratings, I had 8 2 stars, 2 2.5 stars, 12 3 stars, 6 3.5 stars, 31 4 stars, 10 4.5 stars, and 35 5 stars. Once again, more 5 stars than any other rating, which makes me happy. I read 100 adult novels and 8 young adult novels. As far as publication year is concerned, most of the books I read were published in 2024, which was 35 books. 32% of all the books I read were published in 2024. Then the next year is 2023. 22 books, 20% were published in 2023. And then after that is 2022, 14 books were published in 2022. The gender of the authors is a funny one because women definitely rule my books, like the books I read, because 90% of the books I read were written by women. That is 94 books. Then I had 4 books written by men, 2 non-specified, and 4 by multiple authors. I do have to say, the multiple authors, I believe most of them are Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, so at least that also has a man. I read 80 different authors, and let me see the ones I read the most. Definitely Rena Kent. I read 6 books by Rena Kent. Yeah, she's the one that I read the most books from this year. And then S.T. Abbey 5. Obviously, I read the Mindfuck series this year. And then after that is Anna Huang. I read 4 books by her this year. And as far as new or returning author is concerned, 55%, so 58 books were authors I read from before, and then 46 books, which is 44%, are new to me authors. So those were all the stats. As far as my thing is, so I was slumping hardcore in the middle of the year. I wanted to read a little bit more. I wanted to reread more. There were some big vlogs I really wanted to do this year that I didn't get around to, that I will do next year. But I still read over 100 books, so that is amazing. And as far as my goals are concerned, let me actually talk about them, since I'm not going to do a specific goal video, considering I'm not going to be doing any goals in 2025. I had this goal to have no books recommended over 150 times. I did not meet that goal. I still have... So I started the year with 16 books or series that were recommended over 150 times. Now I have also 16. I do have to say, I did read a lot of them this year, but I also added to them. Not me, other people added to them by recommending the books. So I actually read 12, so still not 16, 12 books or series that were recommended over 150 times, but then I also added another 12. My other goal was to remove 30 books published before 2018. I removed 63, so I did reach that goal. I only read 1 of them. The other ones I all unhauled, but still it counts. I wanted to reread 30 books. That did not happen. I only reread 2. I wanted to finish the Shadowhunters universe. I didn't even make any progress in that world. I wanted to read 50 books published in 2024. I just told you. I read 35. So I didn't meet that goal, but 35 is fine, honestly. I wanted to read at least 50 fantasy or romantasy. I read 14. Then there were some authors that I wanted to read their backlist for. I did not accomplish that goal. I wanted to read at least 4 fan fictions. I only read 1. And then as far as my audiobook goal, I did meet, because I wanted to listen to at least 10 audiobooks. I ended up listening to 11 audiobooks. I met that goal, but like I said, there are some loose goals I have in the back of my mind, but I'm not gonna make a video about it. I will not care if I don't meet them. So yeah, I don't think these types of goals are for me. Moving on to the tier ranking. So like I said, if you're interested in every single book, check out the other video I did that tier ranked the books I read for the first 3 months of the year. These are all the books I read after that. So starting in April. So this is all the books I read from April to December. And this is in no particular order, I guess. It's just random. So starting with Sinner. Oh yeah, let's actually talk about the tier. So the first one is favorite of the year. This makes sense. It's a favorite of the year. Next are books I loved. And then after that are books I liked. Then I have a special category for rereads, although I do have to say I didn't reread a lot of books this year. Then there are books that are just hot. Sometimes that is what I'm in the mood for. I don't have anything particular about it. It was just hot, and I tend to enjoy those books, but doesn't really fit in the other categories. Then I have books that were just fine, and then the last one is hated or DNF'd. I'm just gonna put my DNF'd in here too. I will explain if a book is a DNF or if it's a book I actually hated. So let's get started with Sinner. Sinner I liked. This, I could have also put it in just hot, except I thought this book was definitely more than just hot. I teared up a couple of times. It does deal with a parent who is terminally ill, so that was very difficult to read. So it wasn't just hot, but I did like it. I didn't really love it. Blankets was fine. This one, can you see that? Let me... Yeah. I didn't really like this, but it was also not bad. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. I read it earlier. I think I read it last week and I have already forgotten a lot about it. I feel like technically it's a memoir, so I don't want to talk a lot about it or talk a lot about shit about it. I just feel like he picked the wrong time to focus on, because it only focused on 2 weeks of his life about a girl he's not even with right now. So I don't know. It was just like, it was fine. The Wedding Witch was also fine. I have come to the realization that the only book I really, really love was the first one. That is one of my favorite books I read ever. That is one of my favorite books of all time. And then it just went downhill. This one didn't even take place in Gravesglen. It was just, I don't know, it was fine. The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, I liked. This was fun. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. It wasn't offensive to me at all. I had a good time, so I liked it. Next is Leather and Lark. Leather and Lark, I really loved it. I do have to say, probably the reason why I loved it is it was a right book at the right time. This one I read for the Goodreads Choice Awards video I did. This was like so different from all the other ones. Plus, I really preferred this over the first one, so that's why I love it. The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center is my first book that I hate. I'm sorry, I really didn't like this book. I hated the hero. The heroine was fine up to a certain point, and then I hated her too. I didn't like these two, and I really didn't like this book. Butcher and Blackbird was fine. I think this was just a little bit too overhyped for me. I felt like it was a little bit too rom-com-y. I definitely prefer Leather and Lark, because I feel like Leather and Lark focuses a little bit more on the darker side, and that is just what I prefer. Once again, Butcher and Blackbird was not offensive to me, but I don't know. I think it was just overhyped for me. Seduced by the Pumpkin Spice Latte. I don't want to say I hate it. I'm just going to put it at just hot. Even though I gave this book 2 stars, it was not good. But, I mean, it didn't pretend to be good. Was it hot? Technically not, but it was just crazy and unhinged, and that is kind of what I was looking for at the time. Lies and Weddings by Kevin Kwan, I DNF'd, so I don't hate it because I never finished it, but I have a feeling that had I finished it, I would have hated it, because it's not my type of book. I don't like reading about rich socialites and their problems, so yes. God of Ruin. Ooh, where should I put this? This is my least favorite in the Legacy of God series, and I'm debating between liked or fine. I'm gonna put it at it was fine. Landon is just not my favorite hero. Maybe on reread, now that I've read his entire story arc after the 5th one, God of Fury, I like him a little bit more, but this was just not my favorite book. I gave it 3.5 stars. So technically it could have gone either in liked or it was fine. I'm just going to put it at it was fine. God of Fury, however, was a favorite of the year. This was a masterpiece in my opinion. I loved it so much. Definitely made it onto my favorite books of the year video for good reason. Let me see if I can make it even smaller. Can you see that? Yep. I love Nico and Bran. They are perfection in my opinion, and I'm very, very happy I read this. God of Wrath, also a favorite of the year. Both of them made it onto my favorite books of the year video. I really loved Jeremy and Cicely. I thought they were so hot together. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I think one of the reasons why is it surprised me because I didn't think I was gonna love this. So, favorite of the year. King of Wrath, also a favorite of the year, I guess back to back. This Dante Russo is a king among men. I love him. And this is even more special to me because I tend to not really love billionaire romances, but Dante was something special. I really loved him. Also made it onto my favorites of the year. The next one, I'm sure a lot of you are going to hate me for, but Jane Eyre. I'm sorry. Oh my God. And this is a blasphemy. I tried reading Jane Eyre and I DNF'd it. I got halfway through and I didn't understand the hype. So I just cut my losses and DNF'd. Maybe I'll come back to it in the future, but I really tried, guys. Like I got to page like 200 or something, and I also tried listening to it on audiobook trying to see if that could get me through it. And it's not that I'm a classics hater, definitely not, because Little Women is one of my favorite books of all time. But this one, I don't know, maybe I just read it at the wrong time. But I'm sorry I DNF'd it. God of War, I loved. This was not a favorite, definitely not, but I really loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. This was beautiful, but also so heartbreaking, and I do feel like there was not a lot of joy to offset the heartbreak that I could really give it 5 stars, but it was beautiful, and yeah, it was a good conclusion to one of my favorite series of all time. Soul of a Witch, technically it was more than just hot. I'm gonna put it at loved. Even though I think I gave it 4 stars, but the more I sit with it, it's definitely my favorite in the series. I really loved both characters and it was really hot. Like, I'm not gonna lie. This was my first Switch romance. It would definitely not be my last. And this was thoroughly, thoroughly entertaining. The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren, I liked. Christina Lauren is just not one of my favorite authors, but this one I really enjoyed. I did like the fact that this was a little bit more open door, and yeah, there were some things that were annoying, but you were supposed to be annoyed by it. And this was a solid 4-star in my opinion. King of Sloth, I also liked. I gave this book 4 stars. This, comparing it to King of Wrath, this is the type of billionaire that I don't really like. So this is a trust fund baby. It's also the type of hero that throws money at his problems instead of trying to fix it himself. And yes, that is part of his character arc, but even at the very end, yes, he does accomplish some things, but at the end of the day, it's still in him to try and fix stuff with money, and I just don't like that. I mean, I understand if I was a billionaire, I would also probably do those things. I just don't like reading about it. The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, I'm gonna say liked. Serpent in the Wings of Night is a series that a lot of people love. I am not one of them. I like the series. I definitely find myself being thoroughly entertained while reading it, but they don't really stick with me. These are not my favorite characters, nor are they my favorite books, but it is a good time. And I do think Carissa Broadbent is an amazing author. I just have a feeling her other books are going to be more my thing. Daydream. Oh my God. I'm going to say that I hate it. I didn't hate it. I'm going to say it was fine. I think I gave it 2.5 stars. It highlighted things that were bothering me about her other books that I just couldn't put my finger on it. And this one just, like I said, highlighted it for me. My favorite in the series was Wildfire. I think that is where she shone. Daydream was just not really for me. I didn't think these two had any chemistry. I didn't think there was any stakes in this romance. And I just didn't find myself caring too much about the romance. Gemina. Let me actually get all of the Illuminae books. Yeah. So I read this entire series. So Illuminae was a reread, but I definitely loved it a lot more the second time around. And then Gemina and Obsidio I really loved. I gave all of them 5 stars. I would highly, highly, highly recommend listening to the audiobook while reading it at the same time. This was a joy and a delight to read. They are young adult sci-fi books, but like I said, audiobook top tier. It is full cast with sound effects, and you just fly through these books, and these are amazing books to get you out of a reading slump. Moving on to Keeping 13. Yeah, so Binding 13, I talked about in my in the other video. Keeping 13, I really loved. Johnny and Shannon, like this duology, following Johnny and Shannon is heartbreakingly beautiful. I do have to say, so they are a little bit too long in my opinion. That's why it's not a favorite of the year. We'll have to see for Saving and Redeeming 6 because Joey already has half of my heart. So I think that duology will be my favorite next year. But after Binding 13, I wanted to do nothing else but continue on with this series, which I did. But then Keeping 13, after I read like the first couple of chapters that had to do with the cliffhanger, I didn't really find myself. This was beautiful, but I don't know, it didn't quite make it onto my favorites of the year because like I said, I do feel like it's a tad bit too long. The Mindfuck series, however, did make it onto my favorites of the year. I talked about only the first novella in the first video because I believe I read the other ones in April, but since I read 4 of them in April, I have to talk about the whole series. This definitely made it onto my favorites of the year. This was this was amazing. Like, this was everything everybody said it was. These books consumed me while I was reading them. I was dreaming about this series. I was talking about it to my friends in real life and my coworkers in real life, which I rarely do. This was amazing. Puck Shy by Kayla Gross was just hot. This was nothing but smut, and I definitely enjoyed it. Yeah, there's not really much else to say about that. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, however, was my favorite book. Was actually my favorite book of the year. I really loved it. I know this is very hyped. I know a lot of people have put this on their favorites video, but I think for good reason. Like, this is amazing, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Riding the Headless Horseman was also just hot. This was unhinged, but unhinged in the best way. I would only recommend it if you're looking for an unhinged, smutty Halloween novella, because I wouldn't recommend it for anything other than that, so therefore it's just hot. Not in Love, I hate it. I have talked about this book many a time. I didn't like this book at all. And if you want to know my reasonings, I talked about this in its own vlog, where I also actually talked about God of War, but I also talked about it in my Goodreads Choice Awards video and also my worst books of the year. So plenty of ways to hear about me ranting about this book. Funny Story was a favorite of the year. I do have to say, for Funny Story, so it was in 10th place. I do think, had I read more books this year, this probably would have not made it onto my favorite. I do love it very much. I like both characters. But comparing it to the other ones on this list, I don't find myself thinking about this as much as the other ones, but it's still a favorite of the year, and I did definitely love it. Moonflower by Elira Firethorn was also just hot. This is an MFM romance. They end up having sex in a graveyard, but really it's nothing more than that. It's just these these two guys who want to have a relationship with a girl, and she wants to have a relationship with both of them, and them navigating that, but doesn't have any other plot than that. This Summer Will Be Different was fine. I have come to terms with the fact that Carly Fortune is not for me, but I have to keep reading them because she does end up showing up in a lot of Goodreads Choice videos. Like, her books always make it in the Goodreads Choice Awards, but also like any Goodreads related video I want to do, her books always show up in there. So I guess I'll keep reading them, but that's why I'm not that harsh on them anymore, because even though I gave it 2.5 stars, I didn't talk about it too much. The Courting of Bristol Keats, I hate it. I gave this book 2 stars, and it makes me so sad. I did a vlog reading this book. I was going into this with such high expectations, but this was just not it, Park. It wasn't. The ending was atrocious, in my opinion. 6 Scorched Roses, I liked. This was fine. No, it was better than fine, but I liked it. It passed the time. I actually read it on vacation, but I didn't love it. I liked it. Priest, I also liked. Let me put it with Sinner. For similar reasons to Sinner, like, this was hot. Like, I cannot deny it. It was scorching hot. Like, I sometimes still think about some of the scenes in here. Like, they are ingrained into my brain, but I cannot put it at just hot because it's definitely more than that. It's about Tyler questioning his faith, his religion, and stuff like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is just a girl trying to fuck a priest. But it was great. I liked it. The Veiled Kingdom, I loved. I haven't continued on with the series. I've heard not the best things about the second book, but the first book I definitely really loved. The Score was fine. I do have to say, this is really not the book's fault, probably because I read this at the exact wrong moment. I read it during my reading slump, but also this was dealing with like a situationship, no strings attached thing. And I was dealing with something similar and it was bothering me. So therefore, I kind of took it out on the book. Sweet Talk. And actually, I'm going to put Call Me Maybe too. I'm going to put them at loved. I really love these audiobooks. Like, this is what an audiobook is supposed to be like, in my opinion. These two definitely helped me in my audiobook journey this year. I know I didn't listen to a lot of audiobooks, but definitely more than I usually do. I listened to 11 audiobooks. And I was really looking for audiobooks this year that I loved. And I think I found the exact type of audiobooks that I really love. And these two definitely helped me in making that decision. But mostly I really loved these romances. I thought they were cute. The heroes were amazing in them. Yeah. Icebreaker, I liked. Although I do think I gave this book 4.5 stars, if I'm correct. But between this one and Wildfire, I definitely 100% preferred Wildfire. I find myself thinking about Russ and Aurora way more than Stassi and Nathan. So therefore, I'm just going to put it at liked. The Striker was a favorite book of the year. I love this book. This one is the classic case of right book at the right time. This one brought me joy in a week where nothing else was really bringing me joy. So this was just perfect. I really loved Asher. He was just amazing. Ice Planet Barbarians, I liked. Once again, I read this smack dab in the middle of my reading slump thinking it was going to take me out of it, but it really didn't. And it took me way too long to read this book. Maybe if I had read it in any other time, I would have loved it more, but I don't really think that would be the case because I don't think this is a lot of people's favorites in the series. I think other books in the series are people's favorites. Wild Love, I loved, which is fitting. This one was not a favorite of the year. Another book in the series is, but I really enjoyed this. Once again, I vlogged it.
Ford was just the blueprint of what every man should aspire to be, really. And once again, a billionaire that I could definitely get on board with.
I love this fighting hero. He loved her ever since he was a teenager, and he kept loving her, and nobody else was going to compare to her. And I just really love that. Jack by Layla Faye was just hot. This was my favorite I read for the vlog of reading unhinged Halloween novellas. This was perfect. And it just had an assignment and executed it perfectly. It was just great in my opinion. Yakuza Lover, I hated. This to me made no sense. Like, why would you have a manga series and then make them literally fall in love in the first volume? Then why would we have any other, like, why would you read any other volume then? You know what I mean? It just didn't work for me. And I know it was supposed to be over the top, but this was a little bit jumping the shark for me. The Pairing, I gave it 4 stars. So technically, yeah, I'm going to put it at liked. I definitely enjoyed myself. I read this for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and this was my favorite 4-star I read in that vlog. I definitely enjoyed myself, but there were some things that were bothering me and prevented me from giving it a higher rating. How to End a Love Story, I really loved. I do have to say, I don't know if I would recommend this book across the board, but this definitely worked for me. And once again, because of the time of my life, but also because I related to her also being an immigrant daughter, I thought it was a beautiful book in my opinion. Lore of the Wilds, I hated. I DNF'd it, but I think it would have been either a 1 or 2 stars had I continued. This was not it. God of Pain, I liked. I gave it 4 stars. Maybe on reread, it would be a higher rating, but I read this mainly, like I read this, especially towards the second half, I read it more for plot purposes than the relationship, because this is not my favorite relationship in the series, but it was, like, I was enjoying myself. The Rivalry was fine. I really could not stand the heroine in this book. She was so childish and immature and not a supportive girlfriend at all. So, but he was great. Sweet Surrender, I liked. Once again, I would have put it at just hot, except it is definitely more than just a smutty good time. I enjoyed this relationship. This is a monster novella, and this is actually the sequel to Sweet Vengeance. So if you really love that book, I would highly recommend Sweet Surrender. This is not like this. Not a lot of people have read it, and I don't know why, because it was great in my opinion. King Sized was just hot. Jessa Kane is good for a fun, quick, smutty good time, and this was exactly that. But I really liked it. I think this is my favorite Jessa Kane. One Hot Italian Summer, I hated. This was just... I talked about this in my Italy vlog, which I'll leave it linked for you, but this, if you're gonna have a single dad, he has to be a good one. Otherwise, I will hate him. And that's exactly, I forgot his name, but he was the worst. I just didn't like him. And the main character read like she was 16, and this was just not good. King of Greed, Almost made it to my favorites of the year, but I loved it. The reason it didn't make it is I wanted this book to be a little bit longer. I wanted a little bit more flashbacks. I think had this book been 50 pages longer and had those 50 pages been all flashbacks, this probably would have been one of my favorite books I read this year. But it's still like one of my favorite books. If I had a top 15, this would 100% be on it. For now, I just really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Maybe I should once again... Can you even see it now? No, sorry. Lord of Scoundrels. All right, I'm back. I just wanted to change one little thing and everything disappeared. That is one of the things I hate about this website. You cannot do anything to change it while you are in the middle of your tier ranking, but I did manage to change it, and I put every book in the exact order, I think, as I just did in the other tier ranking. I just wanted to make it a little bit bigger so you could actually see the entire tier ranking. So let's do the screen recording again and let's get started. Hopefully now you can see everything better. So I think this is the way everything was ordered. Let's move on to Play Along. Play Along is difficult for me because I technically gave it 4.5 stars. So technically it should be at loved, but really I think it's at the beginning of liked. The more people talk about this book, especially in their favorites videos, I am like, I didn't really love this. Still 4.5 stars. I stick by my rating because I really love her writing style. But Isaiah and Kennedy are just not my favorite couple. But I did still like this book, obviously. But the more I sit with it, the parts that I loved the most were the scenes with the caught up character. So in that case, Play Along itself cannot be loved for me. Lord of Scoundrels, I loved. I really love this book. This one I also read for my Italy vlog. Technically, this doesn't take place in Italy, but the hero is half Italian. This was amazing. This was a great historical romance, and seeing this makes me so sad that I didn't read any more historical romances this year, because it definitely is one of my favorite subgenres. This was a great hate to love and amazing banter. Ruthless Strangers was fine. After, I think I gave it 4 stars. I did like it while reading it, but I haven't found myself thinking about this book or these characters ever since I finished it. So therefore, it's gonna be just fine. Okay, apparently I chose the Spanish or whatever, Promesas Cruelas or whatever, Ruthless Vows. I don't know why. I think I just picked the wrong cover. Ruthless Vows I loved. I thought this was a great conclusion. I preferred it over the first book. I thought the sequel was amazing. Roman is such a sweet, soft boy, and I love him. Kingdom of Ash was a reread, but of course, if I had read it for the first time, it would be a favorite of the year. In fact, in 2018, when I first read it, it was a favorite of the year. What can I say about Kingdom of Ash that hasn't already been said? Rule of Wolves was fine. Once again, I liked it when I first finished it. Nikolai is one of my favorite characters and definitely one of my book boyfriends, but I just didn't really like this. This duology didn't need to exist. And if it had, I think she shouldn't have combined the 2 series together. This should have either been Nikolai's story or not at all. So moving on. The Mistletoe Motive, I really loved. I thought this was cute. Perfect holiday romance, in my opinion. Set the Record Straight, I liked. I read both of these back to back, and I definitely preferred the Mistletoe Motive over Set the Record Straight. But Set the Record Straight is a cute sapphic novella. Bound by Duty, I like. I like reading Dante's side of the story because I do know that he is kind of an antagonist to the other characters in this series, but I did enjoy his romance. I guess that's all I have to say. It has been a while since I read this book, I do have to say. Wild Eyes was a favorite of the year. This one snuck its way in there at the very last moment. This was beautiful in my opinion. Definitely one of my favorite books by Elsie Silver, and it was just great. Fate Inked in Blood, I liked. I like this book. Is it my favorite? No. I definitely prefer her Bridge Kingdom series, but this was a fun, unique fantasy romance in my opinion. Swift and Saddled was fine. I thought this was a little bit too short for it to really affect me. I think other books in the series are gonna be my favorite. Scream for the Scarecrow was just hot. Even though the character was too stupid to live, literally, this was a fun Halloween good time. Ensnared by the Werewolves, I hate it. This was just not good in my opinion, especially for a werewolf romance. You guys know that is one of my favorite paranormal creatures, so I tend to give those books the benefit of the doubt simply because it's very easy for me to love a werewolf romance. So the fact that I gave this 2 stars says a lot. I am interested to read the rest of the books though. The Best Man was fine. Even though I should have put it at just hot, and I would have, except for the second half of this book was bonkers in my opinion, like so crazy. And I had to jump the shark one too many times for it to be just hot. Garen Park, I really loved. This one almost made it into my favorites of the year. And once again, if I had a top 15, this one would have 100% made it into the top 15. This was an amazing motocross romance about 2 guys who live in a trailer park. And this just solidified for me that I 100% prefer a romance about people in a trailer park than about billionaires. So there's that. Broken Whispers, I liked. This one I read for my Mafia vlog alongside Bound by Duty and Ruthless Stranger, and this was great. Although this one was, I think, a little bit overhyped for me. I just assumed I was gonna love it, and at the end of the day I didn't love it, but I did definitely enjoy myself. And Love of My Afterlife I also liked. Even though, in my opinion, this was not a romance, it definitely shouldn't have been in the romance category, but I did enjoy the book as a contemporary fiction, I guess, and not necessarily as a romance. These are all the books I read from April to December. Once again, if you want all of the books, check out the other video. So 8 books were my favorite of the year. 16 books I loved. 18 books I liked. 2 books I reread. 7 books were just hot. 12 books were fine. And 9 books I hated or DNF'd. Let me actually... yeah, so 3 of the 8, 3 of the 9 I DNF'd, so 6 I hated. So this was my tier ranking video. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read any of the books that I talked about, and let me know your thoughts. And I would really love to know what was your favorite book you read this year. Leave all your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to leave me a comment but don't want to say anything, leave me either an orange or a yellow heart emoji for God of Fury and God of Wrath. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.